Okay, so we have a few more minutes to kind of go over some of this. I'd like the audience to start thinking about other questions, open field here, either DevOps or just software development, deployment, operations. One thing that I'm curious about, and I think you alluded to it around, the role of open source. I heard vendor supported, so the vendors held liable for any weaknesses and all of that, right? They've got a throat to choke. But there's also the concept of using free and open libraries out available on the internet. I know the communities around Washington, D.C. tend to reuse a lot of code that may be free and not necessarily supported. What does that look like to each of you in terms of the ability to, we can all read the code if we want to, but is that code under the same DevOps process? Is it included in it? Is when you find a vulnerability in a free library, do you go fix it and put it back into the repository? And what does that mean to licensing and everything else related to open source? So a free and open source discussion around quality and security and the inclusion of these capabilities, vendor supported, free, and open. What does that look like to an organization today?
Red Hat, I think you have to answer.
You guys.
So, I got to go to the Red Hat.
It's like all the lights spam.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So, what we're really talking about is software support, right? How do I guarantee that the bits that I'm deploying sort of in my production environment are what I expect them to be? And so you had a very good example that you have a clearinghouse within your organization that does validation and evaluation and oftentimes remediation of any piece of software, whether that be open or proprietary or closed, as it were, coming into the organization, right? That can be a very expensive way to do things, but it's incredibly valuable to your organization to do that. And we also talked about the idea that when you're using open source technologies, either way, you're paying for it, right? So free software is free like a puppy. I would love to give each and every one of you a puppy to take home because I'm just that gratuitous, and I would just love to give you that. But you know that in taking that puppy home, that you're going to have to be responsible for care and feeding for the next 15 years of a puppy, right? And so that's a great gift to give someone, especially like as a parent, just what you needed. And so in very much that same way, you have some responsibility there, right? And so you're finding that you either pay a vendor or you pay like a system integrator to support that technology. I believe that as a commercial entity doing that, Red Hat is in a position to do it at a scale that probably eclipses the capability of most government agencies, right? I'm responsible for doing that for commercial entities and for the US government and for global governments and commercial entities all over the world. And so I think that when we talk about software supply chain security and the support of open source code, we have a lot of value that we can bring, but there is also sort of this DIY model that you guys have embraced, and a lot of that is characteristic of your funding that you found yourself in, right? And so, and we see that all the time. An analogy that I think that might be interesting, and let me know what you guys think is, the post office is responsible for really last mile delivery of mail, right? And so if it's not a postal carrier walking on their feet, it's a postal carrier in a vehicle getting that mail to sort of the local distribution. So those vehicles are really a core component of how the post office does their business. In fact, there would not be a post office if it wasn't for the mail truck, right? It just wouldn't be possible. They'd be back in the post. But should the post office be manufacturing trucks just simply because it's a core part of their business? And I think we would all say, if we heard that now the postal office was going to be manufacturing right-hand drive Jeeps to deliver the mail, we'd say, well, that doesn't actually make sense. They should focus on delivering the mail. And so it's divorcing oneself from sort of your mission versus these other core competencies that are available in the commercial marketplace. And so GAO would say that's a build, not buy sort of methodology, and they encourage that you should buy, not build. And so, but I don't think one can be too prescriptive and that every organization has funding and other sort of modalities that they have to evaluate as they walk down the path. Working with a commercial vendor like Red Hat is certainly an approach, and lots of folks find success there, but that certainly doesn't mean it's the only way to accomplish.